All right, so today we are going to be taking a look at our first day of extending beyond what we've done with hands-on equations. So in your notebooks, we're looking at hands-on equations, extension, day 1. So all those rules and things like that that we reviewed yesterday are still applying, but what we're going to look at now is how we start incorporating when we don't have whole numbers and larger numbers and things like that. So for our first sample problem that we're doing today, we're going to be looking at 3x plus 2 is equal to 19. So just like we've been doing, I'm going to go ahead and transfer it into triangles. So 3x is going to be 3 shaded triangles. And then we have a 2, and that's going to be balanced with a value of 19. Since there aren't triangles on both sides, I'm going to regroup my 19 so that I can take away my 2, which would leave me with 17. I now can cancel out or remove 2 from both sides. So I'm going to have 3 triangles are balanced with 17. This is different at this point because with the work that we've been doing, our number on the right side was always a multiple of the number of triangles that we had. It's still going to be that same process though, because if we're looking at, we now have 17 that needs to be split into 3 equal groups. So I'm going to do 17 divided by 3, and that's what one triangle is going to equal. 3 goes into 17 5 times, which is 15, with 2 left over. So our answer would be 5 2/3, or 5.6 repeating. When we do our check, I'm actually going to advise you to use our improper fraction. So when we do our check, it's going to be 3, which is really 3 over 1, times 17/3 plus 2 needs to equal 19. Even though we have a fraction, we can still work through just like we've normally done. So here, I'm going to do 3 times 17, and that's going to give me a value of 51. 1 times 3 is 3. That's going to be plus 2 equals 19. And now when I look at this, 51 divided by 3 gives me a value of 17. Plus 2 equals 19. So 19 equals 19. And our check works out just like what we've been doing. If you need to, you can go ahead and pause the video and rewind it and go back and look through that problem. All right, our second problem that we're going to look at just becomes a little bit more complicated. So our second problem is going to be 7x plus 15 is going to equal 30x plus 12. I'm still going to use my balance. But now as you look at this, you might be saying, but Miss Whitney, I don't want to color and shade in and draw out 30 triangles. So we're going to talk about how this is going to start to be a little bit different. What we can actually do is I'm going to represent my triangles kind of like I do the same way I do with my numbers in the boxes. So it's going to change a little bit. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to look at, so I've got this shaded in triangle, but now it's going to tell us that the triangle here is going to be worth 7. So I have 7 triangles. And 15 are going to be balanced with 30 triangles and 12. If we look through our legal moves, one thing that we've talked about is that you can remove the same number of triangles from both sides. So in this case, a lot of you have figured out that we're always removing the smaller number of triangles. So I'm going to regroup my 30 triangles so that I can remove my 7, and then 30 minus 7 is going to leave me with 23 triangles. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the 7. That now leaves me with a value of 15, balanced with 23 triangles and 12. I'm going to regroup so I can take away my 12 from both sides. So now I can remove my 12, and now I have 3 balanced with 23 triangles. Just like we did before, I need to split my 23 into, or my 3 into 23 triangles. So it's going to be my number value divided by my number of triangles. It's going to be the value of 1 triangle. So here it looks a little weird because our number was smaller. It just means our number is going to be a fraction, and we can't reduce 3 out of 23, so that's just our final answer. So for our check, it's going to become 7/1 times 3/23 plus 15 has to equal 30/1 times 3/23 plus 12. This becomes 21/23. And since I need a common denominator, this is really 15/1. So I'm going to have to take 15 times 23, which is going to be 345 over 23 is the same as 90/23 plus, I have to do the same thing here, so I'm going to do 12 times 23, so I have my common denominator, which is going to be 276/23. So 276 plus 90 gives me 366/23. 345 plus 21 gives me 366/23. And at this point I don't have to go any further because you can see that the fractions are equal. So it checks out. I know it seems scary working with fractions and stuff like that because it's been a while since we've done it, but this is also a good review for us moving forward, and that's why I also encourage you to go ahead and use fractions. Because for example, if I had tried to do 3 divided by 23 as a decimal, we get a decimal of like 0.13043, and it keeps going on, which isn't exact. And so then when you try and go into your check, it doesn't necessarily always work out accurately. So I'm going to encourage you really to use those fraction answers. And not all of your problems are going to be that complicated. I just wanted to use this as an example. All right, we're going to do one more. So if you need to, go ahead and pause the video and come back to these notes. All right, so we're going to look at our third and final problem. I would encourage you to actually do this problem on your own by pausing the video. And then you can kind of check through your work. Since my numbers are a little bit more manageable, I'm going to use the strategy of actually drawing out my triangles. So I'm starting with my left. I have 4 x's, but then it tells me to take away 2. And then I have a value of 13.5. So even though it's a decimal, I'm just going to go ahead and put it in the box just like I would if it had been 13. And then on the right side, I have 6 triangles. and I'm going to go ahead and take away one triangle. Now at this point, so that it's not confusing, I'm actually going to put in that part that we're going to start now with a fresh line where it's balanced. So I have 2 triangles and 13.5 based on the work that I've done. And then I have 5 triangles on the right. Now that I'm looking at that, I don't have numbers on both sides, so the only legal move that I can make at this point is to remove triangles from both sides. I can remove 2 triangles from the left, because there's 2 triangles I can take away from the right, leaving me with 13.5 on the left and 3 triangles on the right, which essentially tells me that 13.5 needs to be split into 3 equal groups to find the value of one triangle. And when I do 13.5 divided by 3, I get an answer of 4.5 for my triangle. So now when I go ahead and do my check, it's going to become 4 times 4.5 minus 2 times 4.5 plus 13.5 is equal to 6 times 4.5 minus 4.5. And I can actually I'm going to use my calculator just like I normally would. So 4.5 times 4 gives me 18. 4.5 times 2, because I'm following order of operations, is 9, plus 13.5 is equal to 6 times 4.5 is 27, minus 4.5. The right side is going to simplify to 22.5. 18 minus 9 is 9, plus 13.5. Do that addition and I get 22.5 is equal to 22.5. Everything checks out, so we know that our answer of 4.5 is the value of our triangle.